You used to love things, your hobbies, your career, your passions, things that gave you joy, purpose, meaning. But now when you look at them, you feel nothing, not disappointment, not boredom, just complete absence of caring. You try to force the old passion back and can't. You wonder if something's broken inside you, if you've lost the ability to love anything, if you'll ever care about anything again. Carl Jung discovered that this loss of caring isn't depression and it's not apathy. It's a specific psychological phenomenon that happens during genuine transformation, and what's causing it will completely change how you understand what's happening to you. Because Jung found that you didn't lose your ability to care. You lost the psychological structure that was generating false caring. Today I'm revealing why Jung said, stopping caring about things you once loved is one of the clearest signs of authentic transformation, and why trying to force that caring back is preventing what needs to happen next. Here's what Jung understood that changes everything. The caring you lost wasn't coming from your authentic self. It was coming from your ego, the constructed identity that needed certain interests to feel like someone. You loved things not because they genuinely called to you, but because loving them confirmed your identity. Jung called this identity-based investment. You cared about your career because you were the successful one. You loved your hobby because you were the creative one. You pursued your passion because you were the dedicated one. These weren't authentic loves. They were psychological necessities for maintaining your self-concept. But transformation dissolves this ego structure, and when it dissolves, everything that was serving it stops making sense. You're not losing your capacity to care. You're losing investment in things that were never genuinely yours. The first reason explains why this feels so devastating. Jung's first insight. You stopped caring because the identity that cared no longer exists. Not evolved, not changed, died, and all the interests that sustained that identity died with it. Before transformation, you weren't just someone who enjoyed painting. You were a painter. Not just someone who worked. You were your career. These interests weren't separate from your identity. They were how you knew who you were. You cared about them because they confirmed your existence. But Jung discovered that genuine transformation kills this identity structure. The ego that needed to be a painter, a professional, a hobbyist, it dies. And when it dies, the need to engage with those interests dies too. You look at your easel and don't recognize who that person was who used to paint, not with nostalgia, with confusion. One of Jung's patients described this. I'd been a musician for 20 years. Music was my life, my identity, my passion. After my transformation, I couldn't even listen to music, not from burnout, from complete disinterest. The part of me that was a musician had died. Music wasn't serving any identity function anymore. Jung explained, my investment in music was identity-based, not authentic. When the identity died, so did the investment. This is what Jung meant by the death of identity-based caring. You're not losing interests. You're losing the psychological need that made those interests meaningful. The person who cared doesn't exist anymore. And without that person, caring can't exist. You'll recognize this if you look at your old passions and feel like they belong to someone else. If you can't remember why you cared. If trying to engage feels like wearing someone else's clothes. The you who loved those things is gone. But identity death is just the first layer. The second reason goes deeper. You stopped caring because transformation revealed that you were imposing meaning on things that didn't inherently have it. And once you see imposed meaning clearly, you can't maintain investment in it. Before transformation, your interests felt inherently meaningful. Photography mattered, your career was important, your hobby had significance. But Jung observed that transformation includes devastating clarity. Meaning isn't in things. It's projected onto them by the mind that needs them to matter. This recognition destroys caring at its source. You look at your camera and see it clearly. It's just a tool. The meaning, I'm a photographer. I'm capturing beauty. I'm creating art. You imposed all of that. The camera itself has no inherent meaning, and once you see this, you can't unsee it. One of Jung's analysts described this. I was obsessed with fitness, training daily, competing, building my body. After transformation, I looked at the gym and thought, why? Not from losing discipline, from seeing clearly. There's no inherent meaning in moving weights around. I'd constructed meaning, I'm disciplined, I'm strong, I'm healthy. But the activity itself is neutral. Once I saw the construction, I couldn't maintain belief in it. This is what Jung called the collapse of projected meaning. You're not becoming nihilistic. You're seeing that meaning lives in the projector, not the screen. And this seeing temporarily destroys your ability to care about things. You now have only the meaning you give them. You'll notice you can't take anything seriously anymore. Not from cynicism, but from seeing the meaning you've been imposing. Your old loves feel like games you're no longer willing to play. Not because the games are bad, but because you see they're games. And games only work if you forget they're games. But seeing through meaning is just one reason. The third reveals something even more fundamental. Here's what Jung observed. You stopped caring because transformation is redirecting all your psychic energy toward internal reorganization. You don't have energy left for external interests. Not from depression, from reallocation. Think about what's happening inside you. Your entire psychological structure is being rebuilt. Ego death, shadow integration, consciousness expansion. This requires enormous energy. Not physical energy, but what Jung called libido, or psychic energy. And the psyche prioritizes transformation over hobbies. One of Jung's patients described this. I used to love reading, consume books constantly. After transformation began, I couldn't focus on a single page. Not from lack of interest, but from lack of available attention. All my energy was being used internally. Jung explained, my psyche had withdrawn energy from external interests and redirected it to internal work. I wasn't losing my love of reading. My energy just wasn't available for it right now. This is what Jung meant by libido withdrawal. Your psychic energy is pulled back from external engagements to power internal transformation. The interests didn't stop mattering. You just don't have energy to invest in them while deeper work is happening. You'll recognize this if everything external feels effortful. If engaging with old interests feels like trying to run on empty. If you're doing nothing but feel exhausted, your energy isn't gone. It's just being used for invisible psychological work that takes precedence over hobbies. But energy reallocation is just one factor. The fourth reason reveals why this loss of caring might actually be necessary. If you've stopped caring about things you once loved, if your old interests feel dead, their meaning feels hollow, your energy isn't available, Jung would say, this isn't loss. This is making space. Space for authentic interests to emerge. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Now, this final reason reveals what's actually being protected. Jung's fourth insight: you stopped caring about old interests because your psyche is refusing to invest in anything inauthentic anymore. It's clearing space, ruthlessly, completely, for passions that are genuinely yours, not borrowed, not identity-serving, yours. Before transformation, you filled your life with interests for many reasons. Some truly called to you. Most served other purposes, maintaining identity, meeting expectations, filling time, avoiding emptiness. But Jung discovered that after transformation, the psyche becomes incredibly discerning. It won't invest in anything that isn't authentic. One of Jung's analyses described this clearing. All my interests fell away except one, writing. I'd always written, but also did photography, music, sports, socializing. After transformation, everything but writing felt forced. My psyche was saying, this one is real, the others were identity maintenance. Jung said this brutal clearing was necessary. My psyche was making space for what genuinely called me by removing what didn't. This is what Jung meant by the death of borrowed interests. You're not losing your capacity for passion. Your psyche is killing investments that were never authentically yours, so authentic passion has room to emerge, like pruning dead branches so healthy ones can grow. You'll notice some interests died completely, while others, maybe just one, still feel alive. This isn't random. Your psyche is showing you what's real. The things that fell away were serving ego. The things that remain, or that will emerge, are serving your authentic self. But clearing space isn't the only reason. The fifth reveals the deepest purpose of this loss. Jung's final revelation. The loss of caring is teaching you something radical, that you can exist without needing external interests to feel like someone. That being alive doesn't require constantly doing things that define you. And this realization is foundational for authentic living. Before transformation, you needed interests to feel real. Your hobbies gave you identity. Your passions gave you purpose. Your pursuits gave you worth. You were what you did. Remove the doing, and you didn't know who you were. But Jung discovered that transformed consciousness learns a different way of being. Existence doesn't require external validation through interests. You can be no one doing nothing and still be fully alive. This terrifies the ego, but it liberates the self. One of Jung's most developed patients described this. Everything I used to care about fell away and I panicked. If I'm not a musician, an athlete, a creative person, who am I? Jung asked, can you be no one? I couldn't. I'd always been someone through my interests. Learning to exist without needing external pursuits to feel real, that was the hardest lesson, but also the most freeing. This is what Jung called being versus doing. You're transitioning from existing through your interests to simply existing, from needing to do things that define you to being complete without definition, from identity built on pursuits to presence that needs no building. You'll recognize this if you're slowly becoming okay with doing nothing. If you're discovering you exist even without the interests that used to define you. If the panic about having no hobbies is giving way to strange contentment. This isn't giving up. It's discovering that being alive is enough, even without passionate pursuits. Why you stopped caring about things you once loved. Your identity died and took its interests with it. You've seen through imposed meaning and can't maintain investment in what you know is projected. Your energy is being used elsewhere, redirected to internal transformation. You're clearing space for authentic passions to emerge. You're learning to exist without needing interests. Discovering being is enough without doing. Jung would want you to understand. This loss of caring is temporary but necessary. The interests that fell away were serving a false self. They had to die with it. New interests will emerge, or old ones will return, but from a different source. Not ego needing to be someone. Self genuinely called to something. Most people panic when this happens. They think they've become depressed, empty, or broken. They try to force old passions back, recreate old interests, manufacture caring. But Jung insisted, the emptiness is doing necessary work. It's clearing space that can only be filled by what's authentically yours. The waiting is uncomfortable, weeks, months, sometimes longer, with nothing calling you. But Jung observed that those who endure this void, who don't force false interests to fill it, eventually discover passions that are genuinely theirs, not shoulds, not identity maintenance, real interests that arise from their authentic nature. If you've stopped caring about things you once loved, if your old interests feel dead, their meaning feels hollow, nothing calls to you, Jung would tell you, don't force it back. You're in the void between false interests and authentic passion. And this void, as empty as it feels, is your friend. Let yourself not care. Let yourself have no hobbies. Let yourself exist without the interests that used to define you. This isn't permanent. It's transitional. Your psyche is doing essential work, killing what was false, creating space for what's real. New interests will come, or old ones will return transformed, but they'll be different. Not identity-serving, but genuinely calling. Not forced, but natural. Not constructed, but emerged. You'll know the difference because false interests feel like should. I should do this. I should care about this. Real interests feel like pull. I'm genuinely drawn to this, called by this, moved by this. Trust the void. As empty as you feel, your psyche knows what it's doing. It's refusing to settle for interests that served your false self. It's waiting patiently for passions that serve your authentic self. And when those emerge, and they will, they'll be worth every moment of this uncomfortable emptiness. You're not broken. You're not depressed. You're not empty. You're between interest structures. The old ones based on identity died. The new ones based on authentic calling are forming. And in between, you're learning the most radical lesson. You exist fully even without external pursuits defining you. That's liberation, not loss. Subscribe to explore Jung's insights on what emerges after the death of old interests. Authentic passion from the self. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.